Looked at, you know how it said back here that the incidence of sovereignty is to be able to tax the land? Originally, I was looking at saying, let's put a specific consequence in there. As we started working with groups, we said, you know what? We're gonna start managing and measuring twice and cutting once and preparing our plan and studying the best consequence. And our lieutenant governor messages this as well as anyone. He says it's kind of a three-legged stool. The first leg is education and negotiation. Right? If you go into a negotiation and you don't understand your rights, how well are you going to negotiate? Right? So the first step is education and negotiation. The second step is legislation, and the third step is litigation. Right? So you know, there may be other remedies from there, but we've got our Attorney General's office committed and working on this. We just passed another bill this year that works on the planning phase. This isn't just about thumping our chest and saying we want it. We're going through kind of our own state resource management planning process to say, okay, how do we preserve grazing and mining and recreation and open space and conserve areas? In fact, in the bill, national parks off the table, wilderness areas off the table, national monuments off the table. We're not even talking about those. We understand that that's not only our heritage, but we've invited the world to come to those heritage sites. Off the table, we're not even talking about those. We may designate other wilderness and protected areas because we understand that. That's an important part of who we are. But we also understand that it takes money to educate our children, run government, provide public safety, and we've got 45% of our revenue comes from a federal government that it is telling us is broke. So that's all part of what's in the bill. We've got that planning phase moving forward right now. Measure twice, cut once. And so that's what we're working on. So we passed our bill. This year, Wyoming passed the Transfer of Public Lands bill. Idaho, just a couple weeks ago, passed the Transfer of Public Lands bill. Nevada, I just talked to someone there today, looks like they're going to pass their Transfer of Public Lands bill this year. Arizona passed one, governor vetoed the bill. We didn't have as much education on the ground as we would like, and so now we've got to do some more education there. New Mexico is having the debate. Politically, a little more challenging than maybe Utah and Idaho. Colorado, you've had folks introduce the bill here, a little more politically challenging. It's going to take more leverage in Colorado, and it's going to take that flag and that tour bus. You hold that flag up and say, are you ready yet? 46.1% of our revenue comes from a federal government that's broke, and you just keep holding that flag and say, are you ready yet? There is a solution big enough. And so they're moving forward. I think Montana is actually working on some legislation as well. That's the leverage we're talking about. Now I'll show you something else here. I think I've got it. Oh, I do. So let's talk about this leverage. This is just one example. There's dozens and dozens of these that are happening right now throughout Utah and working into other states. This is our Western Growth Coalition, which is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cities and a bunch of chambers of commerce. Letter to the governor, and here's just one of the paragraphs. It says, we urge the continued petition of the federal government to honor Utah's compact of statehood, as they have to eastern states, by disposing of public lands. The success enjoyed by other states in securing control of their lands was and is the product of a united front and an unequivocal determination to reject no as an answer. These eastern states succeeded in compelling Congress to transfer title of the public lands, and so should we. Think of the power to a governor when you're asking him to go out on a challenging field of battle. I don't want to call it that way. I don't want to call it a battle analogy. It's a governing partnership. But you're going into negotiation with your governing partner to know that you've got your cities and your counties and your people and organizations leveraged. You've got them with you, behind you. And to know that and have these persistent statements that, Governor, it's the only solution big enough. I think they even say that in there somewhere. But the only solution big enough. Now let me show you this one. This already passed this year as well. Now we've only got the money and manpower to go so far, and so to the extent that you're ready, we've got to get your counties on board as members of the American Lands Council. It was formed by a bunch of counties. They just hired me to go out and jabber to people and teach. But a bunch of counties came together and said, we've got to go on offense. We've got to do something because we're dealing with the cutbacks of PILT. We're dealing with the cutbacks of SRS and mineral lease and the tax revenues that are going to roll downhill and multiply as they go. But we haven't gotten to eastern states very much, but we got to South Carolina. I've got some friends in the legislature there. South Carolina, House resolution to express support to the western states and the federal transfer of public lands to the western states, and to urge the United States Congress to engage in good faith communication and cooperation to coordinate the transfer of title to the western states. We've also got a letter from their congressman. They sent their resolution to their congressman, and he says, thank you for your letter. I'm on the Western Caucus and the Natural Resources Committee. It's one of my highest priorities. It's about building that leverage. As we've got the resources and the ability to get to other states, there's other states. North Dakota, we just got to get to them. I'm positive they'll pass resolutions like this as well. Other states, I don't want to speak about it, but there are states that are sympathetic. Why would they be sympathetic? Because we've got a federal government that's $1 trillion overdrawn every year. Imagine what opening up that resource does for accountants in other states, equipment manufacturers, service providers. It lifts the boats of all states. This isn't just a solution for the western states. You grow taxpayers and you lift the tax base in the nation. There is a solution to solve the deficits. So what can I do? Come on now. There we go. What can I do? I should have passed this around earlier, but let me get a couple of these going. I got others here. I got another stack of these, Mike. There's a petition if you want to weigh in on. And we start with statements there. One voice, right? We start with one voice. Let me get this one going as well. Take that. You start with your one voice, and then we start leveraging out. We start leveraging out, right? And we'll get copies of this, and I'll get it put up on the website. We're not there yet, but we'll get it put up on the website. Start getting those voices weighing in. That's one voice. Now leverage, right? Now we get to our cities and counties and get them to pass resolutions. Get them to weigh in on this effort. Counties came together to start this. We've got probably 25 counties throughout a bunch of Arizona, New Mexico. I don't think anybody in Colorado is doing yet, but Idaho, Utah, Nevada, New Mexico, but getting them joining in, that's building that leverage to say we're not going to be silent. It's already been done before. That's how they succeeded. And then share the story. There's videos on the website. There's an FAQ that answers questions on all sorts of things that you can pass little things along. What we're working on as we build resource, what we're working on is little digital postcards, if you will, that you can just pass along that tell this story. It's already been done before. And you'll have a little, couple-minute video and a link to the historic documents, and you can just share that and pass that along. Promises are the same. It's already been done before. Yeah, here's how the states can and do manage the lands better than the federal government because people are on the ground. And we've got a whole series of these. We've just got to produce them and get them going. But there's information on the website already. You sign up on by signing this, we'll put you on a newsletter. You'll get information every week that you can share and pass along. Imagine just like in South Carolina, when their congressman knows that South Carolina says by resolution of cities and counties and states, this is the only solution big enough. Imagine the strength your governor has when he's got tens and hundreds of thousands saying, this is the only solution big enough. And we start building that leverage. And then that comes to the last point. We've, contributions. This is just building now. This isn't a heritage foundation. It's not some organization that we've built this huge foundation already. It's building right now because the federal government's telling us they're broke right now. We're 46% dependent in Colorado, 45% dependent on federal funds right now. And so counties and cities and individuals are stepping up. And so whatever you can do to contribute, we've got some forms here. If you're interested to do that, you can do that tonight. You can contribute on the website. You can join on the website. But it's that leverage. We've got to build that and move that forward. You know, messaging and those tools takes money, but also effort. And so as we start putting this together, and we'll email out to you, you share that story forward. We had the opportunity of a generation, I believe. If Illinois, in times that I think their times were fairly distressing as well. Every generation's had its epic struggle. But we're in amazing times. And I think we have the opportunity of this generation to stand and be part of the only solution, I believe, that's big enough. And to be part of restoring for our children and our grandchildren this opportunity of America that we inherited, that we know. Let me just close with this, and I'll take whatever questions, and we've been here for a while. Some of you may have to leave, and if you've got any questions, I'll stick around as long as you want. But let me just close with this statement right here. Ronald Reagan in 1985, at the height of the Cold War, you know, nuclear proliferation, the bombs were building up on both sides, the red phones, you know, and it was all tense and that. Here's what he said in 1985. I think if he were here, he would say the same thing to us. He says, "This is a wonderful time to be alive. We're lucky not to live in pale and timid times. We've been blessed with the opportunity to stand for something, for liberty and freedom and fairness, and these are things we're fighting for, worth devoting our lives to. So let us go forth with good cheer and stout hearts, happy warriors, out to seize back a country and a world of freedom." Thank you very much. I'd be happy. Yes, sir.
So you don't have any holders that tell you right or ask them to fail to slow down the process in Utah? Or?
Oh, you mean the cities or the ski resorts, or what?
Ski resorts and, you know, the
Park
Oh,
City,
yeah.
Snowbird, Canyons.
Yeah, well, yes, we've got some organizations that you know, are pretty well funded, and they like to come out and say, "Oh, you can't manage your own land." And we've got organizations that say, here's the one I like. They say, "You can't afford to manage your own land. You get a couple $100,000 or a couple $100 million from the federal government to manage these lands." Well, guess what? That money's already cutting back because they don't have it. So it's kind of like saying, you know what? You can't afford to have this home that's yours. I can't give you this home that's yours because look at all these expenses that I'm paying. I'm keeping the home. I'm the trustee. I'm the trustee for you. I'm supposed to give you the house when you turn a certain age. Are you over 18 yet?
Yeah, almost.
Okay. So let's suppose I got a trust, and I'm supposed to give you the key to the house when you turn 18, which in fact the Supreme Court for decades, for 100 years, called this relationship where the federal government held title to the land, they called them trustees. That their job was to give the key to the house. And so suppose I'm the trustee, and I'm supposed to give you the key to the house, but I say, "John, come on, look at all these expenses I'm paying for this house. I can't give you the house. Look at these expenses I'm paying." I don't tell you about the revenue you can generate, the benefit from having the house, but that's kind of what they say. But yeah, you've got a heavier lift here. But as these conditions continue to go forward, I mean, it's just math at this point. I'll tell you what, the nation's accountants, the accountants of the nation, are now passing resolutions. They call it the Wake Up America initiative. And they say, this is just math. This isn't politics anymore. It's just math. And so you know, as we keep teaching and telling the story and gathering people in, off we go. Yes, sir.
Has the trustee encumbered the land, using the land as collateral on debt? And if the states do manage to get this legislation passed through to localize this land again, does it come unencumbered, or is this land in fact being used as collateral to secure the $16 trillion dollar debt. So could you clear that up for us?
You know, it's an interesting statement. There's nothing that I'm aware of publicly. I mean, there's rumors and that, but I've seen no deed of trust with China or anybody else. And quite frankly, that's
My concern is that since Flipma back in 1976, when the nature of the relationship changed, did they take advantage of that shift and at that time start using the land to collateralize the debt? And so is it really possible and realistic to get that thing free and clear if we are successful in pushing forth this, with your agenda on?
Yeah, the short answer is nothing that I'm aware of. You know, but what's that?
They're called NCA,
I'm sorry.
National Conservation Area.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, I mean, you've got all sorts of things like that, right? But let me just, as far as Flipma, and I won't go through all of it, but there's stuff on the website and there's videos on there that you can go to. But this trust history started back in 1780. 1763, the colonies are created, and the king said, here's the boundaries to your colony, and to 7 of them, they said you could have claims to the western states. 6 of them have no claims, right? 1776, they declare independence. Robert Morris personally finances the first 3 years of the Revolution. Remember, they said they pledged their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor. First 3 years, he personally funds the revolution, $2 million. He dies penniless. 1780, they're out of money, but they're in the middle of the war. What are they going to do? So, well, we can raise taxes on people to pay for the war. Not a popular thing with people that are revolting against taxes and starting a revolution against taxes, right? But what else are they going to do? But the 7 states say, we'll just sell some of these claims to the western lands. 6 have to raise taxes. 7 say, we're just going to sell claims. We were almost in a civil war in the middle of a revolution. They call it the Great Embarrassment. What they did, they came up with this. And they said, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll be the trustee. The Continental Congress said, we'll be the trustee. And again, the courts have called it this for decades and decades and decades, up until the time of our statehood in the West. Resolved that the unappropriated lands that may be ceded or relinquished to the United States by any of those particular states shall be disposed of for the common benefit of the United States and be settled and formed into distinct republican states, same rights of sovereignty, freedom, independence as all the other states, granted under regulations that Congress may prescribe. They reaffirmed that in 1784 after they won the war. They reaffirmed it again in 1787 with the Northwest Ordinance. And then again in Article 4 of the Constitution, Congress shall have the power to dispose of and make needful rules and regulations respecting the territory. Nothing in this Constitution shall be construed to prejudice any claims of the United States or of any particular state. Claims going back to 1780. The states have a claim to dispose of the land, use the proceeds to pay the debt. The United States has a claim to fund the war, but then use the proceeds to pay the debt. Again, that Andrew Jackson history, that's part of your homework. It's on the resources tab of the website. It's about a 7-page history lesson on this that's just beautiful, but it goes right through everything. So then you get to, well, here's just part of what Andrew Jackson says, right? He's going through the history. I won't tell you all the story, but Congress was disposing of the land. There was no debt anymore. By 1830, the debt was paid off. Imagine how that would be. And Congress says, okay, we have to dispose of the land because it's the great national public trust, Henry Clay says on the floor of the Senate. It's the great national public trust. We got to dispose of the land, but since the debt's paid off, we'll just keep the money in a big pot in Congress, and when the counties and states do what we want, we'll give them some money. Does that sound familiar? And they pass that bill, and it runs into Andrew Jackson. He says, no, you don't understand how solemn these agreements were. He says, and there's so much more to it, but just some of it. It's the real interest of each and all these states, and particularly the new states, that the price of these lands be reduced and graduated. After they've been offered for sale for a certain number of years, the refuse remaining unsold shall be abandoned to the states and the machinery of our land system entirely withdrawn. How would that be? That's where this started. That's why Illinois and Missouri and Arkansas and Louisiana and Florida said, we're not taking no for an answer, because they knew this stuff. And here's just some of the law. This is in 1980 even. In 1980, the Supreme Court says these enabling acts are solemn compacts. That's something more than just a contract. They're bilateral agreements to be performed in a timely fashion. Federal government only held territorial lands in trust for the several states ultimately to be created. Supreme Court again, once the United States fully executed these trusts, the sovereignty of the new states will be complete, the original states will be on equal footing,